Shut up and sit down.
Hello and welcome back to the Tiki Sessions. As always, Stuart Collins from Rawee Board Company, and behind the bar we have Ash. What's the crack?
I'm all good, man. Not too bad, thank you. Looking forward to a good summer.
Yeah. So we've been off air for a while, sort of coming out of lockdown with COVID. Life's got a bit busy, so we haven't been here for a while, but we're back again, and we're back with vengeance. Something's a bit different, Ash.
I don't know, man. Do you ever feel like someone's watching you, or someone's, I don't know, feels a bit off tonight?
I can tell you what it is, Ash. Tonight we have a live studio audience. Please welcome the audience. So, we're back again, and tonight it's a slightly longer extended edition Tiki session because we have three guests tonight. Ash, who have we got on?
We have three juggernauts here tonight. We've got an amazing rock star, a guy called Cormac Neeson, who I seen way back in the day in Belfast from a band called The Answer and the Unholy Gospel Band. We have a really talented music producer called Vail. He's launched Tides magazine, online magazine, not that long ago. And we have a bit of a historic figure in this bar that I'm standing. A guy called Marino Morelli. We're going to find out more about him in a wee minute or two.
Cool. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Marino Morelli. How are you, Marino?
I'm good, thanks.
Welcome back to the Tiki Bar. And I believe it wasn't the Tiki Bar when you were previously here.
Well, it was either the captains or the boat. So
it's funny. There's so many people come in. Like, you know yourself, this bar has such nostalgia. People come into this bar and they're either really digging what I'm doing, or they'll say, "This will never be your fucking bar." Actually, it's always been Marino's bar. It'll be the captain's bar. So, what was the secret, Marino? How were you so good? How were you, what was?
I wouldn't. The crowd, I think, made it really, because it's a mixture of everybody, you know. And you got to make so many friends over the years.
How long were you in here for? How long did you work in this bar?
I worked in Kelly's altogether for 10.
10 years.
10 years.
And worked with some amazing characters over those 10 years.
Yeah, some of the staff are fantastic, really great friends.
At that time, I don't really remember. I mean, I probably wasn't allowed in the boat bar, sort of the higher end crew, but you worked obviously with Charlie and Jared Platt, and
yeah.
Obviously James. Did you meet James much or see James?
Well, James, I would have started off in the study, usually on say a Saturday night. And James would come down for a drink, and then when people started drifting in, he would disappear, go to another bar, sort of work his way up, and then you wouldn't see him sometimes for the rest of the night. But
for anyone who doesn't know James is a real character. James basically created Kelly's, created for his love of live music, for his love of the crack.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody has a story about James. Whether they want to repeat it or not is a different story. Like,
no, James is a great entertainer. Whether it was a rugby club that came over from South Africa or something, he showed them a good time. When they were...
I think that's the thing for me. Like, without going off and on about Kelly's and why Kelly's has stood the test of time, it's hospitality for me and making people feel welcome. And James was the king of it. Yeah. I remember being at an awards ceremony years ago. And they did an outstanding contribution to like Northern Irish crack, basically. And James, they gave him a standing ovation. He was just the man.
Yeah.
Any standout stories with your experience with James, or anything?
No, James just loved the crack, like you say, and he liked mixing with everybody here, and he was just one of the. I'd say he was one of the crew. Yeah.
So Marino, your last name is Morelli,
yeah.
which is not only incredibly famous on the North Coast, but famous worldwide. You're part of the ice cream manufacturing process and you sell worldwide. Where are you with ice cream at the moment? Did COVID affect you? Was it slow? Was there more demand? Or how's things been over the last couple of years?
Generally, our trade has been quite good over the COVID period because we were supplying supermarkets. So that, and luckily we didn't lose too many staff due to COVID. So we're lucky enough in that concern,
Brilliant. And Morelli's obviously has a huge history on the North Coast, and there's various different stores across the North Coast, and like you say, you supply supermarkets and places. I believe you supply Harrods as well.
No, we don't.
You don't. There we go. Fake news.
We used to.
Ash told me that.
It's in the pipeline.
It's in the pipeline.
No, we actually had a cousin who ran a parlour at the top of Harrods,
right,
but they don't have it anymore. But
I'll have a word. I'm going to London next week. I'll have a word.
they get all the exotic locations like.
Stuart?
No, I'm talking about my cousins. They would be in Monaco and
Nice, right.
and Dubai. We're being Ballybogey and.
Ballybogey,
That's it. Like, listen, all the ones coming from Belfast have to come through Ballybogey,
That's
like,
right,
you know.
yeah.
So not a better place for it. And at the moment, is there anything exciting happening with Morelli's, or is it business as usual? And you know, obviously, we're hoping Portrush is going to be manic this summer coming. So are you looking forward to a busy summer?
Yeah, indeed. Compared to last summer, I think it'll be something similar with staycations. I suppose now with a lot of airlines coming back into use, that might affect it. But I know a lot of people have booked the likes of Airbnbs, so it's looking promising for the summer.
Brilliant.
And like whenever I think about, like, very personal to me, but like whenever I was a kid, my granny used to take us down to Morelli's for our big ice cream, big knickerbocker glory as it was. But like you guys, the Morelli family have been in Portrush. When did you first?
Well, it was established with my uncle in 1911. He had a shop in Stone Row in Coleraine.
Right, okay.
Mainly doing fish and chips, and then he introduced ice cream. But and then they eventually moved into Portchurch. That was the main shop.
And is the one in Stone Row gone?
Oh, that was years ago.
All right, okay.
Don't quote me on a year.
No, I don't.
And Marino, I was lucky to be involved with Morelli's some years ago now, whenever you did the world record attempt
Yeah.
in Portstewart, and everything sort of came together that day. Was that, you know, how was that for you as a family?
It was fantastic. I think there's even people fighting to get in the gates because we had to call it a day because we had the right number of people to break the record. And yeah, and the weather was fantastic that day. It was good, very good.
For those of you that don't know the world record, correct me if I'm wrong, it was the most amount of people
eating ice cream at the same time.
At the same time. But it was really weird. They had to be fed by the person to their right.
That's right.
This was a Guinness stipulation. So you were stood there with, like, I was on the roof of a building filming, but people were stood there with a random stranger, they were all linked arms and licking each other's ice creams.
Sounds a bit wrong to me. The guy that was organising that must have been watching some sort of fetish.
Can you remember off the top of your head how many people were in that? It was a couple of thousand.
Yeah, there was a couple of thousand. I can't honestly remember.
You're obviously a numbers man, Marino. Good lad.
Yeah.
Don't quote me in a year. Don't ask him.
You seem to get to a certain age, Ashley.
Tell me about it, man.
That's it.
I bet you could remember a pint of harp in here, or a can of harp.
A can of harp. It was about £2 or something.
That's what Charlie McGuire in the hobby. Well, about £2.
Exactly. And we had a previous guest that we had on, Brian Moore, obviously hosted the event that day and was MC for it. And Brian was talking very fondly about it as well, so he was. And then that evening, if I remember correctly, you put on a lot of entertainment in Portstewart as well. Yeah.
There's a band on at the Crescent, I think. And Natalia maybe sang at it, my daughter. So.
You mentioned Natalia. Natalia is obviously a very gifted singer, and she sings quite a lot.
She takes after her daddy, yeah.
Well, Cormac's singing later. Maybe you could do a number as well for us.
I don't think so.
There's obviously a musical element to you, Marino, because whenever I was open the Tiki Bar, the whole thing for me, music's a big part of what in here, the vibe, because we try to make it very relaxed, but sort of high-end cocktails, a nice relaxed environment. But music is such an integral part of it. And the first person I spoke to, I know your son-in-law DJ's in here, and he's very, very, very good. But the first guy I spoke to was Gary Hassan, and he said to me, "You've got to get Marino in there." And I did try and get you at the very start, but you're coming, well, hopefully this is an exclusive, a Tiki Sessions exclusive. I'm holding you to this now. At some point you're going to do a wee guest DJ set in here.
Well, we're doing the Liggers Ball, me and Gary, next week, so
awesome.
That's the start anyway, so hopefully we'll get a few more after that.
It's so good to see the Liggers Ball back because it had to be postponed from Boxing Night usually.
Yeah, no, it's in between
Boxing Night
Christmas and New Year's Eve.
And it's a great event, and it went away for a lot of years, and it came back there just before lockdown. And then it was, it couldn't go ahead because of lockdown, and then it was replanned and then postponed. And this place will be absolutely jumping next
I'd say it will be, hopefully.
Yeah. I love the Liggers Ball because it's one of those nights you come in and you bump into people that you used to see every Wednesday, Friday and Saturday night in here, and you haven't seen since the last Liggers Ball. And the one before lockdown, you know, it was maybe 10 years since the Liggers Ball happened. And it's great just to bump into all those people as well. And, you know...
Sorry for interrupting, am I right in thinking the Liggers Ball moves? So was it in the Edgewater years ago?
It was in the counties, northern counties, originally, and then it moved. I think it was in the Atlantic for a while, but then it came up here.
I've never been.
That's great.
Well, it was always it was a thing for people coming home at Christmas to meet up.
Catch up.
And the music was fantastic. You know, usually with it was the time of the extremists back in them days when it's...
And sorry, forgive my ignorance, extremists as in like...
Well, they were a local... they were sort of...
A local band.
Yeah,
local
local
band.
Right,
yeah.
sorry.
Shit.
They're actually playing us out at the end of the show tonight.
I'll exit stage left as they start. So what do the extremists play? Punk?
I would say it's indie, maybe. Indie.
Mind taking them at home, my wife.
Yeah, I just stopped talking.
Sorry, okay.
And it's good to see you coming back because, again, other people are coming back, like Toddy's coming back into the fold, Alan Simpson's back under the roof as well. And, you know, it's great to see those people that whenever we were growing up were the staples in Kelly's. And, like, Charlie Maguire, like, you know, he, for my generation, was an absolute legend because he scared the hell out of you. You could fire on a Wednesday night an order of 14 drinks and he wouldn't forget one drink that you'd ordered, and there's people shouting at him left, right and centre, you know. So who, you know, back whenever you were running this awesome bar, who was it that you had working with you, you know, any of those ones about at that time?
You'd be staying here until it got very busy, and I used to go around in circles to try and please everybody getting their drink.
Oh, it's hard.
It's hard.
It's hard
when it's bunged, you know, it is. It's very hard to work. But I would always get on the phone, Charlie, we need help, we need help. So he'd send somebody down. It was somebody different most of the time, you know, but...
People always mention one thing about this bar, and it's not a very nice thing, it's the carpet.
The carpet?
The carpet floor,
yeah, it used to...
Sort of
it had a bit of a reputation, yeah.
Oh.
See, I sort of, whenever I was growing up,
They moved to wooden floors
Thank Christ.
through the time.
Yeah.
Whenever I was growing up and coming to Kelly's, and, you know, Kelly's, you know, all establishments, you know, you have to be over 18 to get into, but a lot of people cut their teeth in Kelly's back in the day when they were a bit younger, but I used to come in here and it would be literally in one door and out the other because I went to Dominican, and whenever I was coming here, it was full of Vince boys. And I had a mouth on when I was younger, and that's probably why you asked me to do Tiki Sessions. And anytime I spent too long in here, one of my friends always had to go and get my brother, who would be down in Beatles, to come back up and sort of pull me out of trouble, you know. But that was the great thing about Kelly's, is that, you know, everybody got on, but there was always a bit of banter between different groups, and there was so many different types of people came to Kelly's as well. That was one thing Alan Simpson was saying, you know, was that, you know, you could have rockers downstairs, you know, new wave people upstairs, and there was always something, you know. And Ash, you were working here the other night, and
the very 500
farmers.
The 500 farmers, that was pretty intense. And as you say, this is a terrible bar to work. Like you do one here, and
somebody's burning over the other side.
Yeah, he's just arrived and he's saying I'm getting served next, and it is tough if you're out there working this side, Matty. It's tough. As soon as I said I was opening this bar, there was one fella, Gordon Clark, on Facebook messaged me and goes, "Hi Marino, what was the score of the Skills Cup today?" And he said it was just all rugby chat. It was like, for me, there's an ex-Loretto student here as well tonight, and we were saying this was kind of an stronghold.
It was.
Like rowers and rugby players, and then the
the year they won the Schools Cup, it was fantastic. Like it was.
Is that Dinger Bell and all?
Yeah, back in the day, they and obviously James free drink for all them boys, so they had a.
It was a mammoth thing, actually. Yeah. And they haven't won it since, have they?
No, I don't think so.
But that was the great thing about James. You know, he was very supportive of if somebody in the local area did something well.
Yeah,
it would be like it wouldn't have crossed his mind twice going, you know, free beer for everybody. You know, and a lot of people like Ash is doing it tonight, but we had to sort of twist his arm for it a bit.
The Tiki Sessions is all about promoting the North Coast, promoting local businesses with sort of a global appeal. You guys, Morelli's epitomise that for me. What does the future hold for number one, Marino Morelli, and number two, the Morelli family and the ice cream, and what's the
Well, I quite enjoy my job now. Originally, I left here to go into the business because it was expanding. So I now do product development, which I like. So
with Christine, does she do product development as well? Or?
Yeah, she does. Yeah, I think the vegan flavors.
Is product development literally just eating ice cream all day and deciding what's nice and what's
It's-
not,
you
and firing
do-
some dime bars in here and some...
No, well, you look at the current trends, and you. I'm working on a few alcoholic ones now, which
Good.
I enjoy doing.
I'm more than happy to help you out. Everyone.
Soon we'll have like a West Bay Lacada Morelli's ice cream. It'll be like rocket fuel, so it would, you know.
Yeah, so we have to keep up the likes of the Great Taste Awards. They like flavors sort of that are out there a bit, and you have to come up with something that's unusual.
And with regards to distribution of like your core range of like our kids love Mr. Morelli ice cream and like all that core range. Where do you distribute it? Like globally? Do you?
No, we don't. We're in the UK just, and
It's pretty.
well, we get into Scotland and some of the Tesco stores there, and and Morrison's in England, and we're going to try and get Tesco throughout the UK. That's the next
Brilliant.
steps. So if you see, we gradually we're in the industrial state we're in. We have units, so you build up stocks of containers and the like. So once that gets, you need to have more room then, you know. So we just build up gradually.
Well,
is
that's
the
what I was
best
going to
way.
say. If you're sort of aiming to get stocked in Tesco's across the UK, is everything manufactured in Korean?
Yeah, everything's.
Wow, that's phenomenal.
Yeah.
So it is.
And it's-
That'll keep you busy anyway.
With Brexit, there was a bit of a problem because it was shipped to Belfast, but now everything has to go to Dublin. So
Right, okay.
we had to change carriers. It was a bit of a
Nightmare.
nightmare at the time, yeah, but
That's
we
it.
got it sorted.
Total nightmare.
Well, listen, thank you so much for coming on tonight. Before we finish, has anyone from the audience got any questions?
They didn't tell me to bring any. It's not
Ah,
terrible.
you shouldn't have to tell.
Next time.
Next time. That was a good question.
Yeah, well done, Darren. Well done.
I thought I think that's.
Comment. I remember sitting there one night, just with Stuart sitting, there was a round table, and it was one of the best nights crack I've ever had. Just sitting there and getting absolutely steaming. And that must have been about 30 years ago.
Do you remember him, Marino? That's what he's saying.
That's it. He hasn't been sober since. So
I'll
he
tell
hasn't-
you, there's some funny stories with the likes of some bookers in here that people would have lit them and not blowing them out. And this guy had a brown ring round his lip.
Not before the Zambug.
Well, listen, Marino, I'm sure Ash will welcome you back to the bar any time, and you can tell this is a night to remember.
You know, it's so good. Like I mean, you'll always have a special place in here, Marino. So I'm delighted that you came along tonight. So thank you so much, and I will hopefully see you in here again.
Oh,
very
you will
soon.
indeed, yeah. Hopefully
Either DJing
a
or
bit
sitting-
sober than last time.
You can't even
we'll
touch
see.
your beer. You should have got a can of art.
Cheers.
Cheers.
All right, cheers. Ladies and gentlemen, Marino.
Good night, good night.
So that's our first guest, Ash. Who's up next then?
We have a bit of a legend. I seen this guy. I knew very little about him. Well, yeah. I seen this guy in a bar I worked in Tattoo in Lisburn Road years ago, and he walked in, the most unassuming, lovely guy with his girlfriend at the time, maybe wife, I'm not sure. And they were just cool as fuck. Excuse my French. Really cool guys. Sat having cocktails. We had the crack, and then I found out he's an absolute rock star. Further down the line, he's supporting AC/DC at Madison Square Garden, and I am so stoked that he said yes to come and see us tonight. So we've got Cormac Neeson, cut a long story short.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Cormac Neeson.
Hello.
Hello, hello.
Cormac, welcome to the Tiki Sessions.
Thanks very much for having us. I just scared the life out of a regular from the bar downstairs there.
Don't worry about them.
I was just loitering in a very dodgy way at the bottom of the stairs. But
That's all right. They are more than used to that, you know.
Can I just say before
Oh,
this
sorry.
is a
Nice one,
very
people,
special
do it.
creation that there's a bit of history between me and Cormac here with
Yes,
this drink.
that's true.
I worked with my manager at the time, was a guy called Kieran Breen. Kieran, still love you, still talk about you, good guy. One of the best managers I've ever had. He showed me how to make this cocktail that you guys absolutely loved. It was called a Yellow Dwarf.
It was.
Was your favourite cocktail?
Yeah.
And it progressively, so it's got fresh chili in it. It's got a bit of 8-year-old rum, bit of lime juice, bit of sugar, and some fresh pineapple.
All the best things.
It's awesome. It's really, really good. And there's quite a healthy dose. As people got on through the night, they got more and more chili, got braver and braver. Christ knows what it was like the next day. But this is probably middle of the road. There's a nice Guinness for you and a nice Yellow Dwarf. Cormac, thank you so much.
I'm delighted. I have to say, like, whenever you were messaging earlier in the week, what do you drink? And I said beer, Guinness. Until we started talking about the Yellow Dwarf cocktails, margaritas, I didn't mean I needed both at the same time.
Well, you can have. You've got two hands, man.
But I'm delighted. I'm delighted.
Cormac, we've had guests in here drinking out of a suitcase before, so we have on the Tiki Sessions, so welcome along. Listen, I'm really excited. I've never met you before until earlier tonight. And as Ash says, you're a bona fide rock star. Now, where does your music begin? How did you get into music?
Bona fide in my own head, anyway. Yeah, I suppose, like, from right back, 14, 15, getting into bands down around. I'm from Newcastle, County Down, and at the time, you had bands like Ash and Relish and a number of really good bands. Even Therapy just had their amazing record Trouble come out at the time. I know they're not from down our way, but they weren't from too
Therapy
far away.
actually, members of Therapy actually used to live in Port Stewart.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So just I think I was a teenager at the right time. Whenever there was living proof that you could make it out of your small town by playing music, and there was enough encouragement to actually take it seriously, and enough like-minded musicians getting together, and I suppose it just developed quite organically from there. I didn't meet the boys in the Answer until I went to Queen's. I ended up walking into ethnomusicology, and the first day there was one seat left, and it was the one beside me, and this boy arrived in like 25 minutes late, and that Paul Mahan from the Answer has continued that habit right to this current day, and he said to me, "You Cormac?" I said, "Yes, we were ringing your ma over the summer trying to get you to sing in our band." I was away in America for that particular summer, so we got a jam organised and just went from there.
It's amazing how things happen, because I was involved in putting on a gig in Bushmills Distillery with Ricky Warwick and Tim Wheeler from Ash, and Tim, I never got to ask him that night, but I'd always heard this rumour, I don't know if it's true or not, that whenever they were doing their A-levels, they were asked to support Pearl Jam, but their parents wouldn't let them go on the tour, and I was like, that's a hell of a risk, but they ended up, and he lives over in New York now, and absolute awesome guy, so it's amazing how things happen. So, you joined the Answer, you became their singer. Where did it go from then?
Where did it go? I suppose we did our time, doing as many local gigs as we could. I remember we played 2 nights in a row. We did a gig in Belfast, a gig in Dublin, Friday and Saturday night, and we were delighted. That was our first tour.
Yeah. What was the gig in Belfast?
Where were we playing? It could have been the Menagerie or somewhere like that.
Right, road, isn't it?
Yeah. I can't remember. I remember it was Eamon Dorns, which I don't think is there anymore in Dublin, and it was one of these. Just we had the gig in Belfast in the Derry, and then all of a sudden we got a phone call saying, "Could you do this gig in Dublin?" We're like, "Yes, tour, let's do it." Delighted.
Tour.
Delighted.
Brilliant.
So listen, it just we knuckled down and we worked very hard at it, and kind of most importantly, I think we believed in what we were doing.
Yeah.
We definitely had that kind of slight chip on our shoulders, like Belfast doesn't care about rock and roll.
Yeah.
It's up to us to make them care about it. So
you're on a mission from
yeah,
God
exactly,
to bring rock and roll back to Northern Ireland.
It's like a Bill and Ted's.
It's like Tenacious D all over again.
I think every band that comes out of Northern Ireland, rock band that comes out of Northern Ireland feels that way, from time to time. But so we kind of had fire in our bellies, and then we got management in London And from there, you know, things started to snowball a bit. Our manager was able to set up some good showcase gigs, some good support slots. We did a kind of mini Ash tour as well, supporting Ash.
Brilliant.
They did the Astoria in London and a few other dates around the UK and Ireland, you know, and just kind of built quite organically from there, you know.
Where did the albums come in this sort of timeline? Like, what had you released an album at this point? Or?
So I think we were probably together for probably 7 years before our first full record arrived, you know. That's why they talk about the tricky second record, because you have your whole lives to write the first one, you know. So yeah, I mean, we got a record deal then. Again, funny story. We were at one of these. It was in the Whitla Hall. It was like a music industry showcase. One of the kind of, I suppose, first of its kind in those days. Now you've got, you know, Output Festival and all these really good outlets for information for artists. But it was a one-day thing, and one of the guys that was talking there was the head of a record label called Albert Productions, who we knew, being the only rockers in Belfast, that they were AC/DC's label.
Right, nice.
And there was a legend of the local scene at the time, a guy called Eamon Keys, who did sound for us for free for about 5 years while we got our act together, you know.
It's a bit like our Tiki crew, so it is.
Yeah,
you know, just working for free for about 5 years,
Hats off. So we engineered it that Eamon would drive the head of this label to the airport. And on that drive, he just bombarded him with our demos. So then, whenever we went over, like that was around about the time we got the management, we went over and did a showcase, like a kind of week-long, you know, playing every night in loads of weird and wonderful venues in London. And one of them, the head of that label, came down and offered us a record deal. Then.
Wow. And what's that like? Because I know a couple of people that have been signed, and I know some people that have been signed and lost the record deal and be re-signed under a different brand, if you know what I mean, different band that they're in and so on. Is it everything you want as a musician to be signed, or is it, you know, is it like, shit, right, we're now signed, so there's that corporate side that's involved in our music as well, or what's it like?
I mean, back it was different then for sure. You know, the landscape's entirely changed since we got our first record deal. At the time, I mean, for us, it was brilliant. You know, you kind of set out. I remember setting out in the interim. My first target was just to get out of Ireland and play a gig in London.
Yeah.
It was like, if I could just get down to London and play a gig, it'll all be worthwhile.
Yeah.
You know, so you just kind of set your targets, and then once you've achieved something, you well, for me anyway, I kept trying to just, you know, set the bar a bit higher. You know. But yeah, at the time it was a really good thing. With hindsight, I think it worked out not too bad at all. You know, I mean, we've had about 4 or 5 different record deals since then. Some of them have been great, some of them have not. You know, and you know, there's such a great potential for doing it yourself these days.
Yeah.
Sometimes you do have to you do need to read the small print and ask yourself if it is actually worth it. But in those days, it was a lot of fun.
And like as a young guy, like you've much more experience than me, but like as a young guy, going into those things, the only thing I've ever seen is like
where he was going
the movies with like NWA, where you go into management meetings, whatever, and you see those things. It's like, do you get, as a young guy, it's a management team's job, they sort out. But now, as a veteran, in the industry, do you get involved? Do you say, right, well, look, these are my red lines, and I'm sticking to them? Like it's sort of a more easier process.
I think for me, it's different at the moment because I have a solo career and the answer, and then a whole bunch of other stuff as well. You know, and you have to deal with each project realistically, and you kind of you realize in your mind like what kind of investment you're going to need to make a proper go at it.
Yeah.
And you know, that might be a record company, it might be self-funding, you know, getting grants, or it might be a different kind of investment from somewhere or whatever. You just weigh it up, kind of project to project. You know, I do anyway.
Yeah.
And yeah, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but you you just put your best foot forward.
Brilliant. And you were saying, so you had AC/DC's manager trapped in a car being bombarded by yourselves.
Good quality demos now. I have
Yeah,
to
that's
say.
it. That's
They
it.
were
So
quality.
that led potentially then to you supporting AC/DC, if I'm right.
So I'd go a bit more chilly there, you know, just for.
I'm just worried about
You
tomorrow
know,
morning. Food.
I'll be honest. So
Next one I'll go chilly.
I was at Ash's tasting session before the bar opened, and I had that, and it blew the head off
There's
me.
like half the chili you
Yeah.
had. He's got double. He's
Yeah,
got double.
you're asking for
I
more.
remember and back in the day, whenever yourself and Kieran were making these, there'd be a big slice of chili floating on top of it.
I know. I
Remember
should have
that?
done that. I thought that was more extravagant. I
Oh,
thought
no,
maybe
that-
a rock star would make it a bit sexier.
That's great. Like I know, I love
Listen,
it.
maybe
I mean, I'll be back. Like I will be back.
put a good review in there, Cormac. Make sure.
Absolutely.
TripAdvisor reviews.
Exactly.
So the AC/DC tour came about just as we were finishing our second album, Everyday Demon. So we'd just been to LA for the summer to make that record, which is, as you can imagine, a lot of fun. You know.
It's very blasé the way you say that.
It
man.
was.
It's not fucking insane.
It was brilliant. We were recording in. It was actually a weird tangent, but Jeff Picaro, the drummer from Toto, it was his home studio. Jeff obviously sadly passed, but the studio was left behind, and he had turned his swimming pool room into a studio. So we were living in the house, and there was a studio down the back, and there's a swimming pool, and we
Just
were.
waiting for it, and there's a Rolls Royce, and then there's this night.
There wasn't. There was a Mustang weirdly
Oh,
sitting
wow.
in the garage, but it was gathering dust. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
it was a shocking waste of a good machine. But yeah, so we were over there all summer, and we just then moved to another studio in London called the Dairy to just do a few touch-ups and record a few B-sides and things. And our James, the head of the label, came down. He says, "I'm taking you out for a pint, lads." You know, he's actually from Downpatrick.
Oh,
The
right,
head
okay.
of Albert
Yeah, yeah.
Productions just went away to London and full circle and everything. You know, taking us out for a pint, lads. We're like, it's 11 in the morning, James. You know.
I can know an Irish manager,
We've
probably.
just we're in the middle of something here. He's like, "Come on out, you can have one beer," you know. So went to a wee bar in the corner, and he was just chatting, and we were probably giving out and complaining, you know, "What's happening? There's nothing happening." And as we were doing this, he was setting sheets of paper in front of us, you know. And he's like, "Turn them over there, lads." And it was like Madison Square Gardens and the Forum in LA and Wembley Stadium, and it was like a year's worth of dates with AC/DC in front of us, you know. And he says, "Aye, so that's what you're doing, you know. We just
Right.
drink our pints and shut
So
up now."
what? Because
Drink your pints and shut up.
like that has I'm an massive AC/DC fan. That has I'm sure you were as well. Again, what's that like whenever you're like, shit, we're about to go on tour with one of the biggest rock bands, not in the world but in history?
Yeah, the immediate elation, obviously, and then kind of pretty deep fear as well, you know.
It's a bit like doing a tiki session in front of 40 people.
I mean, like, you know, to give you an example of what was going on, and Louise was actually there for this as well. We did a couple of warm-up shows in a town called Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. Like an arena in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. You know, it was a warm-up show, but it was still a big gig. And then a couple in Chicago. The first night in our first ever tour bus, the driver went head on into a massive moose or stag. I'm telling you, like we were all up, you know, drinking and going mad because it was our first night in the tour bus and this big tour, and all of a sudden everybody's literally flying through the air in the lounge, like. And we had the bus was then, like, we were laid up in Chicago for a couple of nights because they totally mangled the bus, you know, and I have no idea what happened to the poor moose either, like, but
I don't think it
it was,
did well, man. I can't imagine it did good.
but no, but then, yeah, the fourth gig of that tour and the fifth gig was our first time in New York, and it was a two-nighter in Madison Square Gardens.
So I was in New York in 2019 and did a backstage tour of Madison Square Gardens. Like, that is probably one of the most iconic
Amazing.
venues in the world.
Yeah.
And, you know, coming from playing gigs in the UK, that's a whole different level. And so again, pulling in a tour bus in the Madison Square Garden in New York, that must be
We actually,
the thing of dreams.
I think just because we could, got a limo from the hotel to the venue that day. I think that was the only time the whole tour we were in a limo,
With your triple A's.
Then it was like, don't forget, lads, you're in $10 a day PDs. Like,
That's it.
So yeah, we did 2 nights there, and then the next night we played the Letterman show as well, and that was our first kind of stint in New York. So it was all happening very quickly. Like.
Brilliant.
And what was the relationship like with AC/DC, the boys? Did
Great.
you see much of them?
Aye, we would have done. The very first night, Brian Johnson and Cliff arrived at the door, an hour before the show, and gave us a bit of a pep talk, like, listen lads, I know you're nervous, like, there's been many's a band, we have been in your shoes, just get up and give it everything you've got, and then that was the relationship struck up then. Actually, what would have happened after their shows was they would tour with their kind of extended families, who would have been, their kids would have been our age, so we struck up great relationships with their children, and they would all been kicked out of the band dressing room for an hour after the show where the band relaxed and unwound, So they were all in partying with us, and then eventually Brian and Cliff and Phil would land in and start partying away in our dressing room because the other 2 boys didn't drink, and they were just, keeping a low profile and probably shattered too because Angus obviously gives it a bit.
Did you play with them in Ireland? In Punchestown?
We did, yeah.
I was at that gig. That was a phenomenal gig. So it was, and
a quality rainy Ireland day. Rained all day, and then people had to walk 6 miles because of the traffic congestion.
That's like any other gig.
But it was brilliant. It was fantastic.
But that's the only time I've seen yourself and them, and absolutely phenomenal. So obviously we're coming off the back of COVID, and as we're talking before filming with the audience and stuff, obviously the last couple of years has been really hard for everybody. What's it been like for yourself?
Yeah, funny, I was talking to Ryan about this just before the show, and I mean for myself and Louise, our priorities were trying to entertain 2 very small children, while still trying to pursue a career as well, so it was kind of like I created just the bare bones of a studio up in the spare bedroom in the house, and I would be up there working for a portion of the day, and then I would hear Louise coming up the stairs, and I would know it's time for Louise to do her job, and I go down the stairs and have two very small children climbing all over me for 3 or 4 hours, with no clue of what was going on in the outside world, just delighted to have so much time with their parents, So yeah, I mean, I'm sure a lot of parents were in a very similar situation. Thankfully, at one point, I managed to get a studio built in the back garden, so I had somewhere to escape to.
Yeah.
But even I was telling you the song I'm going to play tonight. I wrote it in the first lockdown, and I would be writing it on our wee electric piano downstairs with the sound turned right down after the kids had went to bed, so as to not to wake the children up, and the actual vocal delivery itself on the recording is very kind of whispery and breathy by comparison to a lot of my vocals, because it had to be, it had to be very kind of gentle so as not to wake the kids up upstairs. So like it's not very rock and roll, but like that was the way life all of a sudden had become, and listen, like I can't complain. I've come out the other side of it, and I'm able to still do what I do and make lots of music, and our families thankfully are healthy and well, and like that's, I mean, whenever the world was locking down and you didn't have a clue what was coming, like you would have taken that all day long.
One of the things I remember, because we weirdly started at the same sort of time. I started doing these very guerrilla, really low budget cocktail classes at home, and then you were doing on a Friday, because mine went up on a 3 o'clock on Friday after the kids were on the bike. It was fucking mayhem, but it was good crack. It gave me focus for the week. And you were doing this, what was it, drink on a
one drink, one song home.
And yours was so fucking polished and so sexy and so relaxed. And it was so soothing, and I was like, I really want to be like him. But it was classic. It's like how many times...
Are you sure you were watching the same thing?
No, it was so fucking cool, man. Whenever, so like you would have come on and it would have been like, oh, such and such is logging on. What about you, man? And then you just played this fucking cool tune and had a whiskey. It was awesome, man.
The whole premise was to kind of go to just dig into the drinks cabinet, you know, and all the old bottles gathering dust, like the cheap rum and the weird Israeli alcohol that nobody knew what it was or where it came from, you know, and you know, all just to go through that, and like it would be 5 o'clock every Friday, so it would be the equivalent of people kind of able to head to the pub for a pint whenever.
That was cool.
Obviously.
It was really, really good.
That was good fun. Like, it was good fun.
Kind of, yeah.
Had
So-
to learn a lot of songs for it. Like.
Who are you listening to that's playing in Northern Ireland at the moment? What local bands?
Local. Who am I listening
Or
to?
other ways if it's easier.
Yeah.
Geez, don't know actually. I'm actually it's not Northern Ireland at all, but I'm listening to an awful lot of Neil Young because I'm taking part in a show in the Mac at the end of May that it's called Reharvest. So there's a bunch of musicians, local musicians, Donald Scully and Susie Coyle and the guys from No Oil Paintings and Connor from New Pagans. A great collection of musicians. Were playing Harvest and Harvest Moon in its entirety at the end of May. So I probably shouldn't say this, but I've taken to, I would spend a bit of time down in Dublin during the week, and I've taken to driving back up the road, trying to learn harmonica solos while I'm on the motorway.
All right, yeah.
You know,
Sure, that's safe.
so
Definitely safe, man.
so it's the only time
Let's hope he drives a Tesla or something. You know what I mean?
So I've
Maybe
like
get that limo driver from
I've
LA.
images of like some kind of weird YouTube footage of like you know somebody just taking footage of this header at the toll bridge playing harmonica to Neil Young, you know, and at the wheel. But if there is a way of making it as safe as possible, I do try and be as cautious as possible, you know. But,
You can take the bite in Newcastle.
there's no overtaking. There's no overtaking.
Right. Well, that's all right. All right.
But yeah, so I'm got my head well and truly in the middle of all that at the minute, you know, and it's great because they're great songs.
And tell me this, man, are you softening in your twilight years? Not twilight years, but
Easy on there. Jeez.
sorry. Because I remember, we talked briefly about this earlier on. Me and my mate Kirk slipped off. Johnny, hello. We slipped off and had the wildest night I think I've ever had in Mandela Hall. You boys were playing, and the sweat was like dripping off the walls, and you just fucking nailed it, man. It was such a good night. But that was real. Like for me, when Rays, you were playing Rays, and it was really heavy, and like with the Unholy Gospel Band, it's a bit more softer. Will that ever come back, or is it? Or do you feel is this a natural progression for you?
Listen, I think you know the Answer have made 6 records and been together for a long time, and I think it's essential in order to maintain the age that you're talking about there. I think it's absolutely essential to explore other avenues as well, you know, and thankfully I've got a couple of great platforms with the Unholy Gospel Band who do, you know, essentially just like reinterpret classic gospel soul covers, you know, and we're actually playing a couple of gigs in Belfast the next couple of Sundays, and it's brilliant.
Where is that plug?
In the black box, in the black box. So
Cool.
we do like kind of little. We before lockdown we did every single Sunday afternoon the Unholy Gospel brunch, and it was free and it was brilliant. But now we're doing
Is that Ether Echo?
Ether and Echo, yeah. It kind of moved around the city
Brilliant.
on occasion, but now we're just doing like little pockets of gigs every couple of months, you know, and they feel kind of special as well because they're all selling out, thankfully, and it feels like a proper event, you know. So I've got that, and then with the solo project, I've made an album, White Feather. It went out there a while ago, and it was so far removed from what the Answer were doing because it kind of had to be. I made it at a time in my life whenever I needed something different, you know, and it reflected a particular time and moment in time for me. But now I've got I've another EP coming out shortly called Invisible Lines, and it's it's kind of following on from the solo stuff, but I've been working with a producer, Johnny Fitch, who he specializes in kind of banging dance music, you know, and it's not that, but it's kind of taken a bit of his world and blending it with my world, and it's made something kind of cool, you know. And then, you know, I'd be lying if I told you that the answer aren't kind of beavering away in the background as well, you know. And
It's an exclusive.
That's it.
yeah, so like
So you're not doing much at the moment now?
things could
You've also got 2 young kids.
Yeah.
keep your
And a
ears to the
wife.
ground. I know,
Keep happy.
I know. So
Good on you, man.
I got into the studio shortly with a group of lads from County Down to make some high octane rock and roll. So I'm looking
Awesome.
forward to
Happy
that
Fuck,
too.
it's what us all middle-aged rockers need.
That's it.
We're coming for you.
That's it. And you should get down and play headline the Liggers Ball sometime, so you shouldn't
Well,
realize.
funny you should say that. Whenever I was listening to Marino talking about the Liggers Ball, we've played it. The Unholy Gospel Band headlined it when it came back to Kelly's there 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
The 27th or 20th of December. It was a great night.
Brilliant. It's always a good night in Kelly's when there's live music, you know. So what's the future hold then in the immediate time? Is you know.
So immediate, I'm going to be releasing a series of singles now leading up to the release of the EP in the summer. Next single's a song called Unbreakable. I'm going to play a song for you called Precious Cargo, which is also on the EP. That's the one I wrote downstairs, kind of whispering during lockdown. And yeah, I'm going to be doing that. Going to be getting into the studio to record some rock and roll. And I do a bunch of writing with other artists as well, you know. So just keeping busy.
Happy days, happy days. Well, has anyone in the audience got any questions? Because obviously, you know, we do have.
I've no ice cream.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, Marino, actually, like I'm sure my 2 kids single-handedly bolstered stock for Morelli's over lockdown, you know. They're big fans.
Ladies and gentlemen. Oh, Thomas has a question.
Is Angus Young as cool as he looks?
He is. He's actually very kind of shy, you know. Like he anytime he talks to you, he wants to talk about Father Ted. and Malcolm, God rest him as well, was the same. The 2 brothers, like, they have this like obsession with Father Ted, you know. Yeah, like I got the impression they watched it flat out on their tour bus, you know. Like the.
It was a documentary.
Very, very cool guy. Like he would stop, like he would talk most with our guitarist, and they'd talk about guitar stuff, you know. So singers weren't really allowed to butt in, you know. It's like, you want to talk about Father Ted? No, okay. But he's a very cool dude, like. Yeah.
Well, listen, I'm sure you've like a million stories you could tell us, but from like day dot, Ash, whenever we first started talking about the Tiki Sessions, we're like, right, who can we get on? And on our first brainstorming, your name came up, and Ash was like,
Don't have the balls.
that's it. He didn't have the balls to ask. And
I
then
know, like, you are a fucking rock star, man.
All you needed
Even
to
though
say, 2 words, yellow
Yellow dwarf.
Yellow dwarf.
right?
Shit, if I had known.
that's it.
But you know
that's
what?
it.
I wasn't as polished then as or we're not as polished. So I'm
Thanks.
glad you waited, because it was fucking car crash
That's it.
before.
These are nice and polished, boys.
Exactly.
It's great. This
Listen.
is class. This is class.
No problem. Listen,
Thank you
thanks so much for
man.
coming on.
Appreciate it so much.
Thank you for having
Ladies
us.
and gentlemen, Cormac Neeson. So, Cormac's actually going to play us out at the end of the show. And Ash, who do we have up next?
We have a very, very talented man who's just launched a very exciting project with Tides online magazine. I have heard about Ryan Vail for about 10 years. I'm so delighted you've come along tonight, man. So yeah, looking forward to having Ryan Vail on.
Lovely. Ladies and gentlemen, Ryan Vail. Woo.
Ryan, welcome to Tiki Sessions.
Thanks for having me.
I probably brutalised the sort of introduction there, sorry man. So basically, I introduced you as a music producer and a video magazine producer. Is that right?
Yeah, like I kind of do a lot of things. So yeah, it's hard to. I can't really pigeonhole me, I don't think,
Okay,
which
cool, nice.
probably isn't a bad thing.
I first heard your name with a guy who unfortunately is no longer with us. A guy, Lyndon Stevens. Whenever I was working for Love and not working with Bacardi, working with Love and Death, there's a guy called Lyndon Stevens he was like a music producer as well.
Well, so London was, he's kind of responsible for my career essentially. So London was like a producer or a promoter in Belfast. Yes. So he would have promoted for Love and Death and Aether and Echo, and yeah, probably would have booked Cormac and stuff as well, I'm sure. Yeah. And he approached me at the time. I had like this record that went out on the Radio 1, was doing really well. And there was
Were you album of the week? Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, I had a few album of the weeks on Radio 1.
Yeah, you know, this is what we're talking about in the Tiki Sessions is, and you know, we were talking to the audience about it in you know, before the show started, about people from Northern Ireland doing phenomenally well in their given area, and you are one of these people. So, you know, big round of applause for albums of the week. Like, you know.
And so, if you had to define a genre of music, I know you don't want to pigeonhole it, but like, what sort of music are you into now?
Kind of what you have been playing here in the bar is kind of like what I listen to, like Massive Attack, Portishead. I was at the start of my career, I was like a hip hop DJ, so I was like, still I'm obsessed with collecting vinyl and just rare finds. So it's like something that's always been, you know, part of my life.
And you finally got that Goldie.
Finally got Goldie, Timeless, after years of trying to get a copy. I was into a lot of music that I was just maybe a bit too young to buy in the shops. So by the time I was like old enough to buy it, it was like, I was kind of, you know, I missed it.
So tonight's kind of weird for me because we sort of have known each other, but we don't know each other through the power of Instagram. We sort of started chatting a bit, and you know, I like what you're doing, you're liking what we're doing, and you know, through sort of researching you, like Ash was saying, there's so many things we could talk to you about. Like, you've composed for Netflix, you've composed for BBC wildlife documentaries, you play music festivals. But you've just released Tides. Tell us about Tides.
Yeah, so it was kind of weird. So I was supposed to get to Tides. It was like a tipping point in my music career. So I'd won an album award, and I just finished, you know, touring America, and came off like shows in Guadalajara, playing with like orchestras and, you know, big laser shows. And we were about to announce like, you know, all these shows in Dubai and whatnot, and the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
So naturally, all the local radio stations reached out to me and thought this was a great idea. You know, they rang me every single day while like 40 shows that were all big earners for the entire team was being cancelled left, right and centre. So what happened was I went on these radio shows, and no one was really like listening to about what happened. You know, it was only music people, and you know, it was just gigs that were being cancelled. And then the next week, the tennis was cancelled, and then people started actually going, oh, what's going on? Then the rugby was cancelled, then the football was cancelled, and then it became a real thing. So what happened was, there's just thousands of pounds lost. Everybody was going, do we have a mortgage, whatnot? And, you know, it was just like this really grim time. But I think in those grim times, you start to learn more about yourself, and you start to kind of maybe consider new things, because up to that point, I was just so busy. I wasn't seeing my family much. I was living at airports and suitcases. And what happened was I couldn't really exist online. It was kind of just doing my head in. I was like, so much, like, people have too much time. They're just freaking out and falling out with everybody. So my wife was like, why don't you start surfing again? You haven't been surfing in years, because my career was just so manic. So she sent me to Trogs with what savings we had left, and I just blew it all in this beautiful,
must have been doing her head in, man.
Oh man, she was melted.
Sent you to Trogs and said, get the fuck out of this house, and there's all our savings, please.
Yeah, so it was like, literally, I went on to Trogs, and the first thing, you know, obviously it's a great shop, but I hadn't bought a board in about like 9 years, and I was like, a board costs how much?
I know.
What? I managed to buy a board, and it was like 300 quid, and you got fans. And it
Now
was like
700 quid without fans.
without fans. I was like, it's like selling a car without wheels.
Yeah.
So after I had this like mental, breakdown over the price of a surfboard in my head, I started surfing again and became obsessed with it. And I used to be like the chairman of the Northwest Surf Club, and we would have been responsible for a small tour that would have ran from Portrush over to kind of Dunfanaghy, and we had surfers like Garage McDade came through our ranks for years before he became like this elite surfer for Rip Curl. And yeah, I suppose it was just that, getting back into surfing, and I got really interested in what was going on. And as great as online is, you think you can access everything. Surfing just seemed very broken online, where like there was no hub for what was actually happening in Ireland. It was like I must have spent weeks, because I had so much time, going, right, who's doing what and what's happening, and really couldn't map out Ireland as a surf, place, or the culture.
And yet it's got some of the best surfing waves in the world.
Exactly. So I was like, what is going on? Like, what has happened that we have like let this like pass? And how do we celebrate what's actually happening here? And that's kind of where the idea of tides came from. It was wonder, could I bring back that kind of old school vibe to the culture, which is what a lot of us grew up with in skateboarding. And for me, when I used to skateboard back in the day, it was like we would have bought these things called 411 Video Magazine.
Yeah.
And it was a VHS tape cassette that you would have bought. And
Sorry to interrupt you, Ryan.
Yeah.
VHS video cassette tapes are what came before DVDs. DVDs are what came before YouTube. And YouTube is what came before Netflix. Is that right, Ryan?
That
yeah,
is
that's
it.
pretty much it.
so yeah, it was like I was just remembering back in the days of skateboarding, and you would have got this cassette. Someone would have presented it, and it would have went through every part of skateboarding. New shoe releases, trick tips, and it was just like that's what I loved and breathed my whole teenage years. So yeah, the idea was taking that 411 Video skateboard magazine idea and putting it into some kind of like surfing kind of focused kind of project. So yeah, I ended up just like scouring Ireland to see who might enjoy that opportunity. And strangely enough, I was met by silence by a lot of people. They were like, I don't know who you are, you sound bonkers, you're going to jump in the water with me and fly drones, and this idea, just no one's doing it, so I don't know what it is. Until I actually contacted, I was a Portrush surfer essentially that kind of gave me the first break, and it was John McCurry. And local legend. He kind of knew me via music and surfing back in the day, and I told him kind of what I was doing, and he says, so we get 3 goes. I was like, yeah, so for me surfing, I'm trying to make it real. This has to be real. It can't be this like I'm following you for a year and we put this 2-minute edit together of the most perfect waves in the world. Because for some reason that's the way surfing's portrayed now, when most of us go out and cry at like awful sessions and wait for 2 hours just for one great ride. And I was trying to bring it back to that real place again. And John got that, and he understood it and said yes. And all of a sudden, once I had someone of his status on board, it was like the rest started to follow. So
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Can I just jump in and say, like, for the first time, I've been married to my wife for 11 years. We sat down and watched John McCurry surfing last night, and she's like, I've never seen waves like this. I was like, you've never fucking sat and watched surfing, but what you've done is suck in.
Did you swear at her like that?
Potentially, probably. But like what you've done is made it accessible, and that's something for me, because I've surfed all my life. I bodyboarded for a long time, surfed for a long time, and I'm back into bodyboarding, and I'm having a lot of fun doing it. But for me, it's quite disjointed, watching guys doing aerials, and to me, it's just like so unachievable. It's no fun. Like you go out and you think, I'm a shit surfer.
Yeah.
Whereas seeing John McCurry falling off last night, or surfing like easily surfable waves that we could all jump onto, it makes it so. Fair play, man. It's brilliant.
And it is that thing where if people can relate to it, they feel more connected to it. And it's not, I think it's great having all these big sponsors like Red Bull and Monster Energy coming in and painting a picture of Irish surfing. But the kind of painting that they make of Irish surfing is it's just constant 60-foot waves under the cliffs of, you know, Aliens and Rileys and all these spots, and there's realistically probably only 20 people in Ireland that can actually surf those waves. For the rest of us, there's great breaks, but they're just not really looked at. So I suppose it feels like an opportunity to maybe just show a different side of Ireland. Yeah.
And in Tides, I watched it yesterday, and you know, you had built up a phenomenal sort of hype around Tides launching, and it was great. And you had the launch where was the launch at the other night?
So we'd done it in a theatre in Derry called Echo Echo, which is somewhere where I kind of started my early days in the music career. So I had a really good relationship with them, and it was really weird because even like I haven't played any gigs, so setting up an event online, and you know, it was no tickets, so you know, 29 people says they were coming, and I was like, okay, right, so it's my ma, my sister, a couple of cousins.
That's it.
So we kind of, you know, got on the theatre and set up 40 chairs. We're like, yeah, that'll make it look full for the gram.
Yeah, that's it.
So like by 7:25, we had 80 turned up, and we're like, oh, right, pulling chairs out from all directions. Then, you know, by the time we were going to do the interviews, there was like 120 there. Then it got to 140. Then it was the guy pulling me aside going, there's no more allowed in this building. It's a fire hazard. So we actually didn't think it would you know, draw that many people.
It is, you know, something like that is well nerve-wracking, because I remember like in August, even though we launched last February, you couldn't have a launch event, if you know what I mean. So we launched Rawee officially in the Atlantic Bar down the main street of Portrush, and like Dazza went to Reading, so he actually did. But we weren't sure. Like we were like, what happens if nobody turns up? And from like Rob, what time was it you arrived? Probably about 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
And like Rob was like one of our sponsors and blah blah blah. He couldn't get in, and people literally were queued around the block, and that was there until midnight. And it's an amazing feeling whenever you get something like that, and you go, people are trusting us and buying into what we're doing.
Yeah, but then there's also that like kind of crap on yourself.
Yeah.
Because then you have to show them something that
That's
you're
it.
like, what if this is shit?
That's it, you know. So talk us through the filming process then. So what did you find like really enjoyable? What did you struggle with? Like, I know from my filming background, you know, nothing ever goes to plan. So how was that process?
I think just generally filming around the ocean is just a constant battle, because the weather just changes so much. And even one of the kind of bigger productions within the episode was night surfing in Donegal.
Yeah.
So I always got frustrated in the winter when I would see a swell and we couldn't surf because it was too dark. So I drafted on a pilot production, put generators on the beach, huge floodlights, and just floodlit a break.
Brilliant.
And invited 20 surfers. We had lifeguards and all. It was all like properly organised, and everyone was getting waves. We were in the middle of like, it was midnight. Everyone was like surfing their hearts out, and the cameras could barely pick it up because the ocean just absorbs light.
Yeah.
So it's like no matter how many watts of light she's put on it, the camera just was like struggling the whole time.
Yeah.
So we missed loads of good footage for that. So, you know, there's ways that we're going to overcome it for the next issue. You know, maybe put like white rash vests on to help see them better and stuff like that. Generally getting into the water with like a 10-gram camera is quite frightening, especially when there's like a surfer bombing at you like 20 odd miles an hour and you're hoping they're going to turn. But yeah, just the whole thing wasn't particularly easy.
Yeah.
And I lost a very expensive drone to it as well. So there's a bit of sacrifice to do those things.
That's it.
Yeah.
Now, one of my favourite sections on the magazine was Chambers' skate section, and it was just stunning. So for those of you that don't know, Aaron Chambers, manager of Trogs in Portrush, and probably one of the best, if not the best skater in the country. Yeah. And you did, apart from Cullen and Thomas, hear the whistle coming. Yeah, but his sequence was just like so perfect, shot beautifully, hitting all the spots in Portrush. Talk us through that.
Yeah, so like with Aaron, I kind of had this idea with the surf shops essentially. That there's so many around Ireland, and they are kind of, you know, the beacons that everybody, you know, associates the scene with. So for me, like the shops, sometimes the focus always becomes the owner. But the owners don't necessarily, you know, put in the daily grind. Obviously, they're doing stuff in the background. So I thought it would be a nice change when I was doing all the shops to focus on the people that we would all know face to face from being behind the till. So Aaron was naturally the first one that I pitched this idea to, and he was like, you know, I can surf, like, but I don't know if I want you pointing a camera at me in the water. I was like, well, is there anything else you do? He's all, you know, I do a bit of skateboarding, like.
And that's typical Aaron, like, you know.
So I was like, oh, really? I used to skate? And we just started chatting, and then, you know, he's like, yeah, I just won the Bridges comp there in Belfast. And I was like, that was a pretty big comp, do you want
Because
that?
there's people from all Ireland at that.
Yeah, that's like pretty serious. And then he started sending me clips, and I was like, oh, you're the real deal here. Hold on a minute. So we just had this idea of, you know, I says, you know, there's parks and stuff. Do you want to go to a park? He says, oh, no, man, I want to represent Portrush. You know, we want the park. We want to just show, you know, the skill level that's here.
Yeah.
So we just literally had 2 hours one night. You know, it was really hard between people getting COVID and babysitters. We had 2 hours.
2 battles.
Yeah.
COVID and babysitters, yeah.
All these babies. So yeah, we basically had 2 hours and really heavy wind that night. So there's a couple of things that he wanted to get, but it was like so windy that, you know, if he flipped his board, the wind was actually like taking it to the other end of town. So we were kind of battling with like sheltered spots, and, you know, we had like wood in the back of the van ready to tape down and, you know, make spots kind of skatable and stuff. So we were kind of well prepared. We had floodlights and everything with us. Yeah, and within 2 hours, he totally wrecked himself for it, and it is a standout piece for sure.
It's stunning, so it is, you know. Yeah. So what's the feedback been like for Tides?
Yeah, so like it's kind of done really well. Surprised, like I thought people would engage, but not to the extent, you know, there's like trying to get YouTube subscribers, anybody know it?
That's a nightmare.
Is really difficult. So we end up taking like something like 550 within like 24 hours, and, you know, the stream started really rising as well. I suppose the funny thing I found from it was that, you know, when usually edits like this go out, there's like channels everything appears in, and you start thinking, oh, it'd be great, you know, if it appeared in these certain channels. Then you start to understand that there's no sponsorship involved in this. There's no big brand names and stuff. So yeah, it's really weird.
That's something that we've sort of really learned with the Tiki Sessions as well, is like a black art trying to figure out the whole YouTube algorithm and making it work.
Like locally in Ireland, it's doing really well. I suppose I always look at stuff from like a music point of view, and you know, trying to make it go worldwide. And it's definitely, you can see these weak pockets. It's hard to break, but.
And you obviously did very well with the music. Have you turned your back on music, man? Or are you hoping to get back into it once things settle?
Well, basically, I was supposed to start touring again. We were about to announce all these really great shows, kind of just before Christmas, and the fear of another lockdown started approaching. And it's like most people in the music industry at the minute, they have other things going on to take them over. So it was like really difficult to, you know, do we all leave our jobs now and go full-time music again? Or, you know,
and that's the big thing that people don't realise. Like, if you're performing, it's not just you. There's an entire 20, 30 people crew behind that do this for their daily living, and that was all stripped totally away from them when COVID started. That's
it, and it's you know, it's even like remembering back to some of the shows, and, you know, even like being in crowded rooms again feels strange. Like I would have been in Germany and Berlin playing quite regularly, and, you know, the Berghain, which is their big kind of like techno place, and, you know, you were playing in this big musty room, and, you know, you couldn't really see anything, and, you know, people were cheering and stuff, and it would finish and the lights would come on and everyone's naked. And you're like,
sorry, Ryan, where's that club at?
So it's like, you just think of various times in your life where you kind
You've
of
woken up with 500 naked people. That happens
the
whole time,
I didn't realize that's what you got from my music, but, you know, yeah, okay. So yeah, you start thinking back on all these like really random experiences you've had around the world, and then realize that, you know, how PG has life become now, and, you know, what's it going to be like? Kind of like just returning to music and like all these like random things that used to happen. So yeah, I don't know.
So what's the plans then for episode number 2?
Yeah, so number 2 we have, although number 1 was very Portrush focused,
Yeah.
I suppose a lot of people realise that. The idea is there'll still be Portrush in episode 2. We kind of start going further south.
Yeah.
And the whole idea is to just keep going around Ireland and just kind of like all the shapers, all the shops get a shout out. Everyone gets a shout out. Everyone gets their spotlight. But naturally, like time is the factor. You know, you can't do everybody all at once. You know, the first episode went out and they're like, do me.
There's me about to say, yeah, Rawee was relevant, and Colin and Thomas, but yeah, no, listen, it's you know, it's the same with everything. You know,
Yeah.
as soon as you do something that people are enjoying, you know, then it all of a sudden becomes really easy to get people. And
Yeah.
It's then the hardest part is deciding who you're going to get and what you're going to
Yeah.
do with them.
Well, the biggest thing is if you do a lap around the whole country, you'll have this huge fan base that you've kind of engaged with. So if I just like sat here, it wouldn't make any sense. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, hopefully by the time I'm back here again,
It's funny how local it is. Like whenever I was growing up, there's a couple of kids, same age as me, created a VHS tape called Hammer Time.
Hammer
Do you
Time.
remember Hammer Time? But it was like skating in the North Coast, and like we're trying to get it.
Wakeboarding and all.
I think Greg has kindly got it for the bar here, but like the skating was insane. But there was a bit of jackass involved. There was a few kids jumping off buildings and stuff they shouldn't have been doing. But it was class. And
Yeah.
it was like, it seems to be a cyclical process where skating comes into fashion, skating goes out of fashion, surfing comes into fashion. But it seems to be this is like the sweet spot where there's surfing and skating seems to be at this nice point where everyone's into it. Our kids are into it, we're into it.
Yeah.
And the thing that you highlighted really well as well is the Groms coming up.
Yeah.
And this is what we were talking about earlier before the show as well with the young skaters in Portrush as well, is that they're that generation and their parents are really buying into those two sports
Yeah.
because it's easily accessible to anybody,
Yeah.
and the health benefits, both physical and mentally, are phenomenal as
Yeah.
well. Like anybody, like free swimming, you know, fresh, like going out into swimming and stuff like that has become really popular over lockdown as well. And anybody that does it's just like, it's the best thing we ever do, you know. So, you know, you did a cracking section on some of the Groms.
Yeah, like the Groms was to be honest, it was a kind of surprise for me. Pete from Bundoran Surf Co contacted me and was like, listen, I'm doing a lot of like work with the Groms, like there's a lot of us putting free time in and trying to just, you know, encourage them. And to be honest, like where we surf in North Malin, there's not many young people surfing. Like it really is kind of the youngest is in their 20s, you know. So I wasn't even used to seeing Groms, never mind like 4-foot Groms,
Yeah.
like black doing airs and like, you know, rocking up at the beach, and their parents just super like stoked that they're doing these things. Like it's also trying to remind yourself that, you know, before the pandemic everyone was very much like stuck on iPads and maybe, you know, not that active, and you know their Christmas presents doesn't include skateboards or bicycles. So now everyone's like, you know, discovering what's out there, and it's the Groms finished the issue number 1 section. And it's just phenomenal, the skill level that they're at.
That's it. And it's, you know, again, we've spoken with our skaters, and it's like whenever you see young people of that age at that talent level, their mates are then going, well, if he can do it or if she can do it, we can do it, and it helps push everybody up together, and it just improves the quality. So I know you've been looking at potentially bringing back competitions across the country.
Yeah, so the competition thing has been something that people kind of asked me quite a bit for. I was very kind of active in the competition scene and probably have about 29 competitions under my belt that I ran. But naturally, there's a lot of issues within the associations that govern the competitions in Ireland, and it was one of the things that was highlighted the most via our socials. And I'd be quite positive about everything, so I wouldn't really get into the nitty-gritty of it. So I basically designed a system where I can operate competitions without them govern it. So I've designed a system that we're going to basically encourage free surf sessions with up to 25 surfers that will last 70 minutes. it'll all be filmed and it'll have commentary and it will actually go online for people to vote. So there'll be no judges.
Yeah.
There'll be prize money and sponsors for good prizes. But again, it's a way to get the whole of Ireland's surf scene actually involved. So it's not just Portrush people voting on Portrush. You know, this is like...
See, back in the day, you know, like the Portrush surfers were like dominating quite a bit of the competitions down south and stuff like that. And the whole surf sort of fraternity is very fractured, so it is, you know. And it would be great to see something coming back that's bringing that together, you know, again.
Yeah, I think it's important now you know, it's the same with skateboarding. Surfing and skateboarding is an Olympic sport now. So it should be treated that way, you know, but not everybody has to be like that kind of skater as well. You know, I would be very much pushing the free surfing side of things. I love it. You know, heats of 20 minutes, people can't always perform in that time. So, it's getting the balance right, but it's also, you know, trying to create this path where when you get to your like 20s, you know, there is a path that you can still, you know, have in surfing and skating.
I think that's the thing. Like, like we as middle-aged men, Jesus, I'm giving a hard time today, but the whole thing is creating a role model for me. So Rosie, for example, I know you know Rosie pretty well. Rosie's a perfect role model for me. Like he is such a fit, healthy guy. He boxes, but he's a great shaper, great surfer, and he creates this role model people where people want to be aspire to be like Rosie. And I think that's where we need to step up and show the Groms and show people how to surf, and like it's about the fun in surfing more than like what is that famous saying? The best surfer out there is the one with the biggest smile. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a cultural shift away from.
I remember whenever I was growing up and I was surfing and skating, like the older guys and girls didn't like. They were like going away, you know. Didn't want out. But the community now is really sort of nurturing, so it is, and that's a really good thing. And it is like the likes of what Cullen and all are doing down at the amphitheatre at the weekend with the skaters. You know, it is like come along, and it's actually made me take up skateboarding again at 43 years of age. So I don't know what I'm planning on doing.
But I think that's
like,
what you and Tides are doing is really putting that in the forefront of a medium that kids are looking at these days. It isn't magazines anymore, unfortunately. It's
not. They're not going to go on to. Well, I was going to say Easton's probably don't even exist anymore. But do you know what I mean? It's like the only place they really exist now is on YouTube. So it's trying to approach it from something that they understand, something that they connect with, and but it's also a place where everybody can connect because everybody knows how to use YouTube. So it is using technology to the best capabilities. A lot of people say Facebook and stuff, but really Facebook is for old people now.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. So what's the next 6 months bring for Ryan Vail?
Well, it's hard to know because I've kind of done 3 major projects like Game of Thrones and Illuminate Derry and all
Which
these.
was a phenomenal success.
It was
Illuminate Derry, I mean, not Game of Thrones. Did I do all right? I don't know. Yeah.
So it's I'm actually going to just take time off now and start film. Well, time off of work. And look at some of issue 2 filming. So,
brilliant. Yeah. Great. And any music in the future?
Yeah, I hope to be doing a new project kind of around October time.
Brilliant.
And start touring again then. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, listen, thanks so much for coming on tonight, and hopefully we'll see episode 2 coming out soon.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers, ladies and gentlemen, Ryan Vail.
Cheers.
So, thanks very much. So that's the end of our first Tiki Sessions with a live audience, and to play us out tonight, we had him on the show earlier, Cormac Neeson. Ladies and gentlemen, Cormac Neeson.
This precious cargo is pure and beautiful. I carry all I need. Left a note on Jupiter's door, said I don't need these words no more. I'm gonna listen for a change. and I'll keep you close to me. As we wander endlessly, all your love, all your pain, it can feed the fire I hold within for you. These shoulders carry the weight, precious cargo. Whoa, whoa. Whoa, whoa. This precious cargo's got me worried sick. How do I know if I'm ready? In a world so furious, I don't know who else I can trust to provide and navigate. And I keep you close to me as we wander endlessly. All your love, all your pain, it can feed the fire I hold within for you. These shoulders carry the weight, precious cargo. Whoa, whoa, precious cargo. Gonna cover my tracks so I don't look back, and you're never gonna know the steps we've taken. Gonna cover my tracks, whoa, so you don't look back, and you're never gonna know the steps we've taken. These shoulders carry the weight. These shoulders carry the weight. Precious cargo. Whoa, oh, precious cargo.